Be careful. Don't get into that car.
Rain slammed against the glass like it was trying to break in. Zina didn't think. She moved. Her chair scraped lightly against the polished floor as she stood, her fingers already reaching forward before her mind could catch up. The man in front of her, tall, composed, surrounded by silent tension, didn't flinch when she stepped into his space. For men shifted instantly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But Zina felt it. Danger. Still, her hand rose, steady. She adjusted his tie. It was crooked. That tiny detail had been bothering her for the past 2 minutes. Now it was perfect. She leaned in just enough for only him to hear her voice. Don't get into that car. Silence. The kind that stretches and tightens around your throat. She pulled back slowly, meeting his eyes for the first time. Kisaragi-ren didn't look surprised. He looked curious. Why? His voice was low, controlled. Zina exhaled softly. Your driver is about to kill you. One of the guards stepped forward. Sir. Kisaragi lifted a finger. The man froze mid-step. Zina didn't look away. He's been touching his jacket every 30 seconds. Not randomly. The same spot. His breathing is off. And he keeps checking the exit behind him, not the driveway. Kisaragi's gaze didn't leave her. And that means? It means he's not planning to drive you anywhere. A pause. Then. Kisaragi turned slightly. They go. The man behind him moved instantly, disappearing through the lobby doors without a word. Zina stepped back, her pulse finally catching up with her actions. She picked up her cup like none of this had happened. Like she hadn't just interfered in something that clearly wasn't her business. Kisaragi sat down across from her. Uninvited. Unhurried. You're either very brave, he said calmly, or very foolish. Zina took a sip. I've been called worse. Seconds passed. If this story is keeping you hooked, take a second to subscribe, and leave a comment. It really helps, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as the story unfolds. Then Digo returned. There was a man with him. The driver. His hands were restrained. A gun dropped onto the table. Silenced. Heavy. Real. Zina didn't react. Didn't widen her eyes. Didn't gasp. She just stared at her coffee like she was trying to decide if it needed more sugar. The driver broke first. They took my daughter, please, I didn't have a choice. Take him, Kisaragi said, his tone unchanged. The man was dragged away. Just like that. No chaos. No shouting. The lobby returned to normal within seconds. Like nothing had happened. Zina set her cup down slowly. Then finally looked at him. You shouldn't fire him immediately, she said. If someone forced him, they'll try again. Just differently. Kisaragi leaned back slightly. Studying her. You just saved my life, he said. Zina shrugged. I noticed something. That's all. No, he said quietly. You chose to act on it. That's not the same thing. She didn't respond. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card. Placed it in front of her. If you're looking for work, he said, call that number. Zina glanced at it but didn't touch it. I don't even know what you do. That's why I'm offering, he replied. Their eyes met again. Something shifted. Not trust. Not yet. But recognition. He stood. Straightened his tie, slightly. Then walked away. Zina watched him go. Only when he was gone did she pick up the card. Turn it over. An address. A number. And a name she hadn't seen in months. Her stomach tightened. Hurricane. The air suddenly felt heavier. She sat back slowly. This just got complicated, she whispered to herself. If you're already hooked, you know what to do, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe. Because this is just the beginning. Zina stared at the card long after the lobby emptied. Her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar. Not because she had changed, but because something had just started. And she knew it. She hadn't come to this city for this. She came because she had no choice. 11 days ago, she stepped off a flight with one suitcase, one contact that didn't work out, and a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. Just survive, she had told herself. Nothing more. Nothing complicated. But survival had never been simple for her. Especially not after Devon. Her brother's name echoed in her mind like a quiet ache. Devon Ibequi. The one person who believed she could do anything. The one person who had everything taken from him. Not by mistake. Not by accident. By design. She closed her eyes briefly. Images flashed. Courtrooms. Documents. Headlines. Fraud. Embezzlement. Corruption. Lies. All of it. Carefully constructed. And behind it. A network she couldn't fully see. But she had been tracking it. Slowly. Quietly. And now. This card. This name. Hurricane. It wasn't coincidence. It couldn't be. Zina stood abruptly. Her chair scraped again, louder this time. A few people glanced at her. She didn't care. Her fingers tightened around the card. If this is a door, she murmured, then someone just opened it for me. The question was, should she walk through it? Her instincts screamed at her. Danger. Trap. Wrong place. Wrong people. But something deeper pushed back. Closure. Truth. Devon. She exhaled sharply. I didn't come this far to turn around now. Her decision settled in her chest like a weight. Heavy. Unavoidable. She slipped the card into her pocket. Picked up her bag. And walked out into the rain. Not knowing that every step she took from that moment on would pull her deeper into a world she wasn't ready for. And closer to a man she didn't understand. But somehow already couldn't ignore. The rain hadn't stopped. It followed her all the way back. Zina didn't rush. She never did. Even when her thoughts were loud, her movements stayed controlled. That was the only way she knew how to survive, observe first, react later. But tonight was different. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag as she stepped into the narrow hallway of her apartment building. The flickering light above buzzed faintly, casting uneven shadows on the wall. She paused. Something felt off. Not obvious. Not loud. Just off. Her gaze shifted to the door at the end of the hall. Her door. Still closed. Still locked. But the mat in front of it. It wasn't aligned the way she left it. Zina's heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up. That was always her first sign. Danger didn't make her panic. It made her focus. She walked forward slowly, every step measured. Her eyes scanned everything, the hinges, the lock, the edges of the frame. No scratches. No forced entry. But the air felt wrong. She stopped just before the door. Listened. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Stillness. Too perfect. Her hand hovered near the knob, then dropped. No, she whispered under her breath. Instead of opening it, she stepped back. Then turned. And walked away. Fast. Not running. But fast enough to put distance between herself and whatever might be waiting inside. By the time she reached the street again, the rain had soaked through her clothes, but she didn't notice. Her mind was already moving ahead. They found me. The realization landed quietly, but heavily. She had barely scratched the surface of Kurohane's network, and already they were watching. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just about her anymore. It never was. Devon. Her jaw clenched. Then I'm already too deep, she muttered. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. She stared at it for a second before answering. Hello? Did you hesitate? Kisaragi's voice. Calm. Unreadable. Zina closed her eyes briefly. No. Good, he said. Then come to the address. She let out a small breath. You planned this. Planned what? That I'd say yes. A pause. Then, almost amused. I didn't plan it, he said. I recognized it. Recognized what? You. Silence stretched between them. Zina swallowed slightly. Someone was in my apartment. I know. Her eyes snapped open. You know? Yes. And you didn't think to mention that before handing me your card? It wouldn't have changed your decision. Her lips parted. Then closed again. He wasn't wrong. That irritated her more than anything. Why are they watching me? She asked. Because you saw something you weren't supposed to, he replied. And because you spoke. Zina's grip on her phone tightened. So now I'm a target. You were the moment you chose not to stay silent. She exhaled slowly. Then I hope this job pays well. It does, he said calmly. But not in the way you're thinking. Before she could respond, the line went dead. Zina lowered the phone slowly. Rain dripped from her hair onto the screen. She didn't wipe it. Didn't move. Just stood there. Processing. Then. A small, almost humorless smile touched her lips. Yeah, she whispered. I'm definitely in this now. If you're still watching, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because trust me, it only gets more intense from here. The drive to the address took longer than she expected. Not because of distance, but because of where it was. The city changed the further she went. The noise faded. The streets widened. Buildings gave way to space. And then she saw it. The gates. Tall. Black. Silent. They didn't look decorative. They looked final. Zina stepped out of the car slowly, her eyes taking everything in. The walls were high enough to block out the world beyond them. No guards in sight. But she felt them. Watching. Always watching. The gate opened before she could touch it. No sound. Just movement. She stepped inside. And the gate closed behind her. That sound? Soft as it was. Felt louder than anything she had heard all night. A man was waiting for her halfway up the path. Dago. She recognized him instantly. His expression didn't change as she approached. You came, he said. Zina tilted her head slightly. Was that ever in doubt? Yes. She raised a brow. Honest. I prefer efficiency, he replied. She studied him for a moment. Then nodded once. Fair. He gestured toward the house. Follow me. Zina did. The inside was quieter than she expected. Not peaceful. Controlled. Every step echoed just enough to remind her she didn't belong there. Not yet. Staff moved through the halls with precision. No wasted motion. No unnecessary words. It felt less like a home. And more like a system. Daigo stopped in front of a large door. Kisaragi is inside. Zina crossed her arms slightly. Am I supposed to knock? No. He opened it. And stepped aside. Zina walked in. Kisaragi was standing by the window. Back turned. Hands in his pockets. Like he had been expecting her. Of course he had. You're late, he said without turning. Zina glanced at the clock on the wall. I'm exactly on time. That depends on perspective. She smirked slightly. Then I guess we're starting off disagreeing. He turned. His gaze landed on her immediately. Sharp. Focused. Assessing. Good, he said. I don't need agreement. I need accuracy. Zina stepped further into the room. And you think I'm accurate? I know you are. A beat. Then. Why? She asked. Kisaragi held her gaze. Because you acted without hesitation in a situation where most people would have stayed silent. Zina's expression didn't change. That doesn't make me special. No, he said quietly. It makes you dangerous. The words hung between them. Not as a threat. But as a fact. Zina exhaled slowly. Then let's not waste time, she said. What exactly do you want from me? Kisaragi stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. I want you to observe, he said. Everything. Everyone. Patterns, inconsistencies, behaviors. Zina nodded slightly. And when I find something? You tell me. And if I don't trust you yet, she asked bluntly. A flicker of something crossed his eyes. Gone just as quickly. Then you'll learn to, he said. Zina let out a quiet breath. Confident. Practical. She studied him for a moment. Then. Fine, she said. I'll do it. Kisaragi nodded once. Like that settled everything. But as Zina stood there, she felt it again. That quiet shift. That pull. Like she had just stepped onto a path she wouldn't be able to walk away from. And deep down, she knew. This wasn't just a job. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. Zina didn't sleep that night. Not because she couldn't. But because she refused to. The room they gave her was quiet, too quiet. Clean lines, minimal furniture, nothing out of place. It felt less like a bedroom and more like a space designed for control. She sat at the edge of the bed, elbows on her knees, fingers loosely clasped. Listening. Counting. Mapping. Every sound mattered. Footsteps in the hallway, measured, consistent. A door closing, soft, deliberate. Distant voices, cut off before words could form. Zina leaned back slightly, her gaze drifting toward the ceiling. They don't relax here, she murmured. They maintain. Her eyes lowered slowly. And that means something's coming. She stood. Walked to the door. Opened it just enough to peek into the hallway. Empty. But not unguarded. Never unguarded. She stepped out anyway. Quietly. Her bare feet made no sound against the polished floor. Zina moved slowly, not sneaking, but not announcing herself either. She wasn't trying to hide. She was trying to understand. Halfway down the corridor, she stopped. A faint voice. Low. Controlled. Coming from the room at the end. She tilted her head slightly, focusing. Timing has to be exact. A man's voice. Another replied, even lower. After he leaves, that's when it's clean. Zina's fingers tightened slightly at her sides. After he leaves. Kisaragi. Her pulse didn't spike. It sharpened. And the girl, the second voice asked. A pause. Then. She's already a variable. If she becomes a problem, remove her. Zina's jaw tightened. Not fear. Recognition. She stepped back silently, careful not to let the floor betray her. And turned, returning the way she came. Her mind was already working. Fast. Precise. They're not improvising, she whispered. This is planned. She reached her door. Slipped inside. Closed it quietly. Then leaned against it. Eyes closed. Okay. Her breathing stayed steady. They're waiting for him to leave. That means his movements are predictable. That's a weakness. She pushed off the door. Grabbed her phone. Stared at it. Hesitated. Trust. It wasn't there yet. Not fully. But. He needs to know, she said under her breath. She dialed. It rang once. Twice. Then. Yes. Kisaragi's voice. Awake. Of course he was. Zina didn't waste time. There's a plan, she said. Inside your house. Silence. Not shocked. Not surprised. Just listening. They're waiting for you to leave, she continued. Timing matters to them. That means they've studied your routine. Who? He asked. I didn't see them. Just heard enough. What exactly did you hear? Zina repeated it word for word. No additions. No guesses. Just facts. There was a pause on the other end. Longer this time. Then. Stay in your room. Zina frowned slightly. That's not helpful. It's not a suggestion. And locking me away helps how, she shot back. It keeps you alive. Zina let out a quiet breath. I didn't come here to hide. No, he said calmly. You came here to observe. So observe. From where you're safe. She almost laughed. Safe doesn't exist here. Another pause. Then. You're learning, he said. The line went dead. Zina stared at the phone. Then lowered it slowly. That man is exhausting, she muttered. But she didn't argue further. Instead, she moved. Back to the door. This time. She locked it. Not because she felt safer. But because she understood the game now. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Zina stayed awake. Listening. Waiting. And then. A sound. Not loud. But wrong. Metal. A soft click. Her head turned toward the window. The curtains shifted slightly. Not from wind. From movement. Zina was already on her feet before the thought fully formed. Too soon, she whispered. The window slid open. Slowly. A shadow slipped through. Then another. Zina didn't freeze. Didn't scream. She moved. Fast. The first man lunged. She stepped sideways, grabbing his wrist, twisting sharply. A muffled grunt. The knife in his hand dropped. Zina kicked it away instantly. The second attacker rushed her. She ducked, pivoted. Her elbow drove into his ribs. Hard. He staggered. Not down. But enough. Zina didn't wait. She moved again. Grabbing the edge of the chair. Swinging it straight into his shoulder. A crack. He hit the wall. The first man recovered. Came at her again. This time faster. Zina's breathing stayed steady. Controlled. You're sloppy, she said under her breath. He swung. She blocked. But the force pushed her back. Closer to the wall. No space. No room. The knife. He had another one. Of course he did. Zina's eyes flicked once. Distance. Angle. Timing. He lunged. She shifted. His blade grazed her sleeve. Too close. But not enough. Zina grabbed his arm. Twisted. Harder this time. A sharp crack. He dropped. This time for real. The second man pushed himself up. Blood at the corner of his mouth. Still coming. Persistent. Zina exhaled slowly. All right, she murmured. Now I'm annoyed. Before he could reach her, the door burst open. They go. Guards behind him. Efficient. Silent. Final. The attackers were subdued within seconds. Zina stepped back. Her chest rose and fell once. Twice. Then steadied. Kisaragi appeared moments later. Not rushed. But not slow either. His gaze locked onto her immediately. Not the attackers. Her. You're injured, he said. Zina glanced at her sleeve. A thin cut. Nothing serious. I've had worse, she replied. He stepped closer. Closer than before. His eyes scanned her briefly. Checking. Confirming. Then. You didn't stay in your room. Zina raised a brow. They came into my room. A beat. Then. A faint shift in his expression. Not quite anger. Not quite relief. Something in between. You handled them, he said. Not a question. A statement. Zina shrugged lightly. They weren't very good. Daigo glanced at her briefly. Almost impressed. Almost. Kisaragi's gaze didn't move. They won't underestimate you again, he said quietly. Zina met his eyes. Good, she replied. I'd hate to make it easy for them. Silence settled between them. Heavy. Charged. Then. If you're still watching, Zina muttered softly, almost to herself, you might as well subscribe now, because clearly, I'm not getting out of this anytime soon. Kisaragi tilted his head slightly. What was that? Zina smirked faintly. Nothing. Just thinking out loud. But as the guards dragged the attackers away, as the room slowly returned to order, one thing became clear. This wasn't a warning. This was escalation. And Zina? She wasn't just involved anymore. She was part of the game. The hallway outside Zina's room was silent again. But silence no longer meant safety. It meant reset. Like someone had pressed pause on chaos just long enough to clean the board. Zina stood barefoot near the center of her room, arms folded, listening to the fading footsteps outside. Guards. Movement. Orders being exchanged in low tones. Everything controlled. Everything calculated. Except what had just happened to her. She exhaled slowly. They're testing limits, she murmured. Not guessing. Confirming. Her fingers brushed the edge of the cut on her sleeve. It wasn't deep, but it was enough to remind her that hesitation here meant consequence. A soft knock came at the door. She didn't move immediately. Then. Another knock. Shorter this time. Recognizable rhythm. Daigo. Zina stepped forward and opened it. He stood there, expression unreadable as always. Come with me, he said. That sounds optional, she replied. It isn't. A pause. Then she stepped out. If you're enjoying the story so far, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment. It really helps. They walked through the corridor in silence. This time, Zina noticed something different. The staff weren't just moving. They were missing. Too many empty paths. Too many closed doors. Lockdown posture. Something had changed. Zina glanced sideways at Dago. They got nervous fast. They didn't get nervous, he replied. They adjusted. Because of me? Dago didn't answer immediately. That was answer enough. They reached a reinforced door at the end of the hall. It slid open. Inside, Kisaragi Rin stood near a large table, lit only by a soft overhead glow. Screens lined the walls and maps, movement logs, surveillance feeds. He didn't look at her right away. Sit, he said. Zina didn't. I prefer standing. A brief silence. Then Kisaragi finally turned. His eyes met hers. Then stand, he said simply. Daigo stepped out, closing the door behind him. The room felt smaller immediately. Not physically, but strategically. Zina crossed her arms. You called a full lockdown because of 2 attackers? Kisaragi's gaze didn't move. No. He tapped the table once. A screen shifted. Footage appeared. Zina's apartment hallway. Her old apartment. Empty. Then. Movement. Men entering. Searching. Systematic. Zina's expression didn't change. But her eyes sharpened. They didn't just find me, she said quietly. Kisaragi nodded once. They traced you. Her jaw tightened. How? That's what we're going to find out. Zina took a slow breath. Control. Stay in control. She stepped closer to the table now, eyes locked on the footage. They didn't search like random intruders, she said. That's extraction protocol. Kisaragi's eyes narrowed slightly. Explain. They weren't looking for valuables. They were mapping habits. Entry points. Weak routines. She paused. Then added. They're preparing to erase someone. Not just attack. Silence filled the room. Kisaragi studied her for a long moment. Then. You've seen this before. It wasn't a question. Zina didn't answer immediately. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides. Yes, she said finally. The room grew colder. Not literally. But something shifted. Kisaragi's voice lowered slightly. Where? Zina hesitated. Then. My brother. The word landed heavy. Even in a room like this. Even in a world like his. My brother didn't disappear because of evidence, she continued. He disappeared because someone decided his life was inconvenient. Kisaragi watched her closely. Same network? Zina nodded once. Kurohane. A pause. Then Kisaragi straightened slightly. So it's connected. Zina looked at him sharply. You already suspected it. I confirmed it. Her eyes narrowed. And you didn't think that was worth mentioning earlier? I needed to know if you were involved before I involved you further. Zina let out a short, humorless breath. Convenient logic. It's accurate logic, he corrected. She stepped back slightly, pacing once. You brought me in because I noticed things, she said. But now the thing I noticed is the same thing that destroyed my life. Kisaragi didn't interrupt. Zina stopped. Looked at him directly. So tell me something, she said. Was I a coincidence or a calculated risk? Silence stretched. Long enough to feel intentional. Then. Kisaragi replied. Neither. Zina frowned slightly. You were an opening. That made her pause. He continued. Kurohane adapts to patterns. I needed a variable they couldn't predict. You were that variable. Zina's voice lowered. So I'm a tool. No, he said immediately. One word. Sharp. Final. That made her still. Kisaragi stepped forward now, closer than before. Not invading. But present. You are not a tool, he said. You are the first disruption in a system that has stayed untouched for too long. Zina didn't respond. But something in her expression shifted. Just slightly. Kisaragi turned back to the screen. They escalated faster than expected, he said. Which means they're reacting to you. Zina's voice was quiet. Then I'm already inside their attention span. Yes. She exhaled slowly. That means I'm not safe anywhere. Kisaragi looked at her again. No, he said. It means you're already in the war. A beat. Then. Zina gave a small nod. Fine, she said. Then let's stop pretending I have a way out. A faint silence followed. Then Kisaragi said something that changed the air again. There is a way out. Zina looked at him. He met her gaze. But not while you're standing alone. The words hung there. Not romantic. Not soft. Just absolute. Zina studied him for a long moment. Then glanced away. Convenient, she said quietly. Kisaragi didn't respond. But he didn't look away either. A notification beeped on the screen. Daigo's voice came through the intercom. Movement confirmed. External perimeter breached attempt. They're probing again. Kisaragi turned instantly. Seal Sector 3. Zina stepped closer to the screen again. Watching. Calculating. Then. I can predict their next entry point, she said. Kisaragi looked at her immediately. Show me. Zina reached forward. Pointed at a section of the map. Here. They'll avoid heavy surveillance zones. This corner blind spot connects to maintenance access. Daigo responded through comms. Confirmed weak point. Kisaragi nodded once. Then we wait. Zina frowned slightly. Wait? Yes. For what? For them to commit. Zina looked at him. That's dangerous. Kisaragi's tone didn't change. Everything here is. A pause. Then Zina gave a small, reluctant nod. Fine, she said. But if this goes wrong, I'm blaming you. A faint pause. Then. Fair, Kisaragi replied. And for the first time since she arrived. Something almost like trust began forming in the space between them. But outside the walls. The real game was only just beginning. And Kurohane had already started moving its next piece. The silence after Daigo's last report didn't last long. It never did in Kisaragi's world. Zina stayed focused on the map, her eyes tracing the blind spot she had marked. Every detail mattered now. Every second of hesitation was a door left open for someone else to walk through. Then. A sharp static burst came through the speakers. Sector 3, contact. Daigo's voice followed immediately. Multiple intruders. Confirmed breach. Kisaragi's expression changed. Not panic. Not shock. Adjustment. Lockdown, he said instantly. Full containment. No exits. The room shifted into motion. Alarms didn't blare loudly. They pulsed. Soft. Controlled. Like the building itself was breathing differently. Zina stepped closer to the screen. How many? She asked. 8 confirmed, Daigo replied. Possibly more in blind zones. Zina's eyes narrowed. They're not random attackers. Kisaragi turned slightly. Explain. They're coordinated, she said quickly. Too clean. This isn't a raid. It's a distraction. A beat. Then she added. There's another objective. The air changed instantly. Kisaragi looked at her. And in that moment, understanding clicked between them without words. The center, he said quietly. Zina nodded once. You. For the first time since she met him. Kisaragi didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned toward the exit. Daigo, he said into calms. Protect Zina. Zina blinked. That's not necessary, she said quickly. I can handle myself. I didn't ask, Kisaragi replied. And then he was gone. The door shut behind him. Heavy. Final. Zina stood still for half a second. Then. Of course he walks into danger alone, she muttered. Typical. A crackle came through her earpiece. Daigo's voice. Stay where you are. Zina exhaled sharply. I wasn't planning to tour the building. Good. A pause. Then. A distant explosion shook the lower section of the estate. Not loud enough to destroy. Just enough to signal intent. Zina straightened immediately. That wasn't random, she said. No, Daigo replied. They've escalated. Zina's mind moved fast. Too fast. They're forcing movement, she said. Splitting security. Drawing Kisaragi out. Correct. Her eyes narrowed. And if he's the target, the mansion is just bait. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered once. Then stabilized. Zina turned toward the door. I'm going after him. No, Daigo said immediately. Zina didn't hesitate. That wasn't a request I made to you. A pause. Then Daigo responded, lower now. You'll die if you go alone. Zina's voice softened slightly, but only slightly. Then I die understanding what's happening. Silence. Then. A click. The door unlocked. Zina frowned. That wasn't you. Daigo's voice came through, quieter now. No. That was him. Zina stared at the door. Kisaragi. Even while under attack. Still controlling the board. She stepped out. The corridor was no longer calm. Red emergency lighting painted the walls in uneven pulses. Footsteps echoed somewhere far below. Shouts, cut off quickly. Efficiency in violence. She moved fast now. No hesitation. No curiosity. Only direction. Down. As she descended, the estate felt less like a mansion and more like a machine breaking apart in real time. Then she saw them. 2 guards down. Unconscious. Not dead. Controlled. Zina crouched briefly, checking their breathing. Professional, she muttered. They're not here to massacre. They're mapping responses. She stood again. And kept moving. Another corridor. Another turn. Then. Movement ahead. She stopped instantly. 3 figures. Black gear. No markings. One of them raised a hand slightly. Not attacking. Signaling. Zina stepped back into shadow. Listening. They said he'd be here, one voice murmured. He is, another replied. Just not where we expected. A pause. Then. Find the girl. Zina's breath slowed. Her name didn't need to be spoken. She already understood. She was no longer collateral. She was a priority. The three began moving forward. Zina exhaled slowly. "All right," she whispered. "Let's end this quickly." She stepped out. First attacker turned? Too slow. Zina moved first. Elbow to throat. One down instantly. Second rushed. She sidestepped. Used the wall. Pivoted. Shoulder strike. He staggered. Third pulled a blade. Zina caught his wrist mid-motion. Twist. Drop. The blade clattered. 3 seconds. All down. She didn't wait. Didn't check if they would get back up. She continued forward. The deeper she went, the louder the fight became. Not chaos. Containment. Controlled war. Then. She reached the central lower hall. Doors blown open. Smoke drifting low. And there? She saw him. Kisaragi run. Standing alone. Facing 5 attackers. Still. Unmoving. Like he had been waiting for them. Zina stopped at the edge of the hall. Her voice came out quietly. "You're insane." One attacker lunged at Kisaragi. He moved. Barely. The man dropped instantly. Another followed. Same result. Efficient. Precise. Not rushed. Not emotional. Just execution. Zina watched, stunned despite herself. "He's not fighting," she whispered. "He's finishing." Then. A new voice echoed from above. Calm. Controlled. Familiar. Still predictable. Zina's eyes snapped upward. A figure stepped into view. Tailored coat. Composed posture. Kurohane. Takashita Kurohane. He looked down at Kisaragi. Then at Zina. And smiled faintly. "There she is," he said. Zina's stomach tightened. Kisaragi didn't look away from the attackers as he spoke. "You're early." Kurohane chuckled softly. "I'm exactly on time." A pause. Then he raised a hand. And the remaining attackers stopped moving. All at once. Zina froze. "What the?" Kurohane's eyes shifted to her. "You think you discovered this network by chance?" he asked softly. "No. You were placed near it long before you ever noticed." Zina's breath slowed. Kisaragi's voice cut in. "Don't listen to him." Kurohane smiled wider. "Ah, but she should." Then. He looked directly at Zina. "You weren't recruited by him," he said gently. "You were redirected by us." Zina's fingers tightened. "That's not true." Kurohane tilted his head slightly. "Isn't it?" A screen dropped behind him. Footage. Documents. Her arrival records. Her failed job interview. Even the moment she first saw Kisaragi. All connected. All arranged. Zina's chest tightened. "No," she whispered. Kisaragi moved for the first time. Fast. One attacker down instantly. But Kurohane didn't react. Because Zina had already stopped moving. Kurohane spoke softly. "You are not here by accident, Zina Ibekwe." A pause. Then. "You are here because we needed you to meet him." Zina's eyes lifted slowly. "Why?" Kurohane smiled. "Because Kisaragi Run is not the target." Silence. Even Kisaragi paused slightly. Kurohane continued. "You are." Zina's breath caught. The lights flickered violently. Then. Alarms screamed across the estate. Not controlled anymore. System override. Kisaragi finally turned fully toward her. For the first time. Urgent. Zina, move. But it was already too late. The floor beneath her lit up. A signal pattern. Lock activation. Hirohane's voice faded slightly. You were never the observer. His final words echoed through the hall. You were the key. The ground beneath Zina shifted. And dropped. Kisaragi moved instantly. Zina. But she was already gone. Swallowed into darkness. The chamber sealed instantly. Kisaragi stood at the edge of the open drop. For the first time. His calm broke completely. Below, only silence. Above, Hirohane's faint voice echoed one last time. Now the real experiment begins. The estate alarms continued screaming. Security systems collapsing. Kisaragi slowly raised his eyes. And for the first time in years, there was no strategy left. Only a name. Zina.